It's fucking Stranger of Paradise again. Alright, you all know the bit at this point. I had literally just finished the Wanderer of the Rift DLC for Stranger of Paradise when not moments later did I realize that the final chapter had already dropped. I'm more excited about this than anything I've been excited about in a long time. I mean, the sheer amounts of joy that talking about this brand new DLC are filling me with is just like unheard of quantities of happiness. And what's not to look forward to? This will be the culmination of all the little teasers and mysteries that the devs have left sprinkled throughout the world. We finally get to see the Lufenians in action, we get to fight the legendary Omega weapon. This is gonna take everything I have, so I am prepared to spend exactly however long it takes. How in the hell is it that easy? Okay, time to tattle on myself yet again. Yes, I did use the 400% Night Affinity invincibility and play in extra mode. I've said it before and I'll say it again, I don't have a million hours to grind for the perfect gear, learn the optimal strats, and continuously ram my head into the wall until I can make minuscule progress. It's one thing that I'm not naturally good at these kinds of games, with Stranger of Paradise particularly, and Dark Souls and all that, but when the DLC is just the same 4 bosses repeated 6 times in a row, I feel obligated to be bad. You fight the Emperor, then the Omega weapon, then the Lufenian, then the Emperor again, then the Warrior of Light, and then finally, in a weirdly cathartic moment, you actually get to punch Jack Garland in his dumb face. It was incredibly satisfying, and then suddenly, it was over. That was it. Well, that's not totally true. 3 new missions unlock at the end, but they're really just 3 of the same thing we've seen before across different parts of the world map. Just an upgraded Emperor and an upgraded Warrior of Light. The best part is probably the new and updated costumes for each character, but legitimately at the end of the day, it's still the Emperor and it's still the Warrior of Light again. Even in extra mode, I let them smack me around to try and see their attack patterns and experience the fight for a moment before eventually wiping the floor with them. I do find it interesting that my partners would die as fast as I did in normal mode, but in extra mode, they became surprisingly durable. I wish they could be like that all the time, but whatever. Well, I guess I've got a little bit of extra time because of how short the DLC was, so let's dive in a little bit on the story. So sometime after cleaning up after Greg, Jack and the Chaos crew meet a Moogle from another dimension. The Moogle tries to convince Jack to be a hero, and Jack is Jack. They travel to Central, the Lufenian city existing out of their own dimension, and fight their way through hordes of mannequins to try and stop the last remaining Lufenian from destroying reality. Honestly, it's not like reality is anything worth it at this point, so he can just have it. Mannequins, by the way, are these like crystal puppet creatures that you fight in the Dissidia series that take the form of combatants in the conflict. So like Squall or Titus or, you know, Papalimo. Here though, they're just palette swaps of your basic enemies. Palette swapped enemies, my favorite, because why put in effort? After wandering for a few minutes, you meet Emperor Amadeus, the antagonist from Final Fantasy II. It's a really cool cameo, but honest to God, nothing more. In a fun little twist though, the Emperor's interest in Jack is actually teased months in advance of this in the Final Fantasy mobile game Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Rest in peace, sweet prince, I miss you. When that game introduced Jack Garland as a playable character, his force partner was the Emperor, which didn't make sense to anyone at the time. Of course, Jack treats the Emperor with the same respect as everyone else and rearranges their face into a handsome Squidward. He then fists the Omega weapon into the next century and leaves the last Lufenian as a stain on the carpet, reducing them to a crystal and saving his dimension from extinction. Now, this is where things get interesting. The titular different futures. After saving the world, Jack decides to leave the power of the crystal where it lay, building tomorrow with his own power. The Moogle talks about how, in a different future, he and the Fiends will live on in legend. And then the credits roll. But that's not all. We actually get to see some of those futures in action. When Jack destroys the Lufenian, the Emperor decides to make a power play and claims the crystal for himself. So of course we do the right thing. Clobber him into the ground, rip away his magic, throw him into the rift, and tell him to start from the bottom. I'm sure this will have no significant impact on this story or any other story now or in the future because, you know, future game planning, that's a thing. In future number 2, Jack sits on the Chaos Throne, shrouded in malice. The Warrior of Light shows up and is quickly turned into a shish kebab. this story ending was actually my favorite. You take on the role of the Warrior of Light, retaining whatever class you had equipped at the time, and get to smack the ever-loving shit out of Jack. It's revenge for all those hours of hearing him be a total jackass, and somehow also for his choice in music. But Jack doesn't go down easy. He will actually use the abilities that you've unlocked through leveling up your classes, making him a force to be reckoned with. It was honestly the best fight in the entire DLC, maybe even the entire game, and it was just so incredibly cathartic. Like its predecessors, Different Future brings a bag of stale Doritos to the party. Only this time, they're significantly less stale and that flavor that you actually kind of like. You know the one, the purple bag. We see the hardest difficulty yet in the Lufenia mode, which instead of just making things harder by raising the overall level cap, every enemy is as tough as if they were from floor 30 of the Dimensional Labyrinth, which is just so damn painful. They also found a way to appeal to the hip young gamers of today. They gave Jack a gun. Yes, Jack can finally join Fortnite and pop a chaos cap in your ass as a marksman, hunter, or gambler. Also new in this DLC is the ability to duplicate your favorite weapons and armor using mannequin materials, which is probably a really cool feature. I just won't ever use it. And at the end of it all, we're given a speech about how the forces of the world must be used as intended, never using light for dark, and how the fifth crystal was in our hearts all along or some jazz before thanking us for completing the story. Now, if only it would pay my therapy bills. And with that, after over 100 hours of chaos, my time in Stranger of Paradise has finally come to an end. I started this journey not being good at games like this, and by God did I end up even worse than before. To be 100% honest, I never imagined that this game was going to take up as much of its time on my channel as it ended up doing. I legitimately thought I was going to make one video about this game that I thought was funny, and then it spiraled out of control with 3 DLCs and a story arc that I tried to tie in that eventually I just realized, like, I would never have gotten this far without Stranger of Paradise. So, like, I don't need a story arc. Stranger of Paradise is my story arc. Not in the way of, like, I'm Jack or anything like that. I mean, it literally started my channel and then is now, like, bookmarking an era of season 1, hypothetically, of retrospective, something like that. But hey, I guess I can finally check Stranger of Paradise off my content list now and forever. So with that, let's move on and find something new and exciting to review. Okay, let's see here. I could play literally anything now that I have completed Stranger of Paradise Quadrilogy. So let's move some things out of the way here. Okay, you know what? Why don't we look at this one right here, you know? We got Star Ocean Second Story R for the PS1. You know what? I got this really tall case. Why don't we look at Tales of Phantasia for the PlayStation 1? Yeah, that's gonna work. How about Lunar Silver Star Story for the Sega CD? Yeah, that's totally gonna be